Hey, I am Mustafa Sharif. Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm looking forward this conversation is going to be super interesting because the topic is super interesting and also the guest, a great friend of mine. We studied together, master in sustainable urban planning and design here in Stockholm, and now he's back to Greece. And today the conversation, so it's in between countries, all the way from the Greece. Hey, and welcome, Yanis, to Urbanistica podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yannis. I'm an urban planner. Uh, it's an honor, Mustafa, to be part of Urbanistica podcast. Um, yes, so uh, Greece called Sweden, interesting, and GIS, what an amazing topic in urban planning. Yeah.
Yes. So,
So
Yanis, how are you?
I'm fine, healthy. Now with the pandemic, but we stayed healthy. In lockdown here in Greece, uh, but still working, um, reading a bit, doing an online course about spatial analysis and GIS. So yeah, always on keep growing.
Well,
Yeah.
Yanis, for me, you're the master in GIS because I saw your magic when we were studying the master and even after when you show me your project. So, how would you like to introduce yourself to
Yeah.
Urbanistica podcast listeners? And please tell us, what are you passionate about?
Yes. So I'm an urban planner. I've studied urban planning in Greece, and then I had my first master's in GIS. So I would like to uh, present myself as a spatial analyst, an urban planner with an expertise in spatial analysis. Um, yes, and I'm passionate about explaining and understanding how cities work. And yes, I want to understand how uh, understand the relations uh, that happen inside a city. And GIS nowadays is a way to do that because we generate a lot of data.
Yes.
Uh,
So,
so
yeah, Yanis, how did this passion grow up? So, was it from university time or before when you were a bachelor, or maybe even when you were a kid, maybe?
well, no, during my bachelor's, I had a course about geographic information systems. So I found it I found that interesting. So I said, okay, let's give it a try when I after my graduation. Uh, so back in 2010, uh, beginning of the economic crisis here in Greece, I applied for the geographic information systems or geoinformatics masters in National Technical University of Athens, an important university here in Greece. I got admitted and said like, okay, I I should give it a try and go there, even though the situation was tough back then. And you know, as you're part of a community of like a scientific community, and when you do your masters, you've experienced that you see things that you have never imagined, and then your passion about a topic grows, and that happened to me as well. Uh, Yeah, in 2012, I finished my first thesis, and it was about time geography and spatial analysis. So from that time onwards, I'm hooked up with GIS, and I try to implement it in urban planning. Yeah.
Yes. And today, as you mentioned, the topic is going to be more about GIS and
Yes.
how can GIS help us to create social cities, better and smarter cities.
Mm.
From what I know from people I'm working uh, with and from people from outside the company, from the master that I study. So GIS, either people like it so much and they are so good in it, or people hate it because they not so have so good relationship with it. So let's get the intro. What is a GIS and What does it mean, the GIS letters, and when did it start? Just give us an intro.
Yeah. So GIS stands for Geographic Information System, and it's an old story. It started in late 60s, I think 1969, 68. Um, and from a geographer, I think it's Roger Tomlinson, and an English geographer who he worked for, not a company, for Canadian government. He wanted to put all um, land use, land uses in a big computer, so big database. So what GIS is, it's like a map, a physical map that you digitize it and you have it on your computer, and then a table that has information about every point on that map. It's very powerful, and the reason that it's been created, it's because governments back then, they wanted to store and analyze data about their property. So what type of how large is this area, and what type of crops grow there, or what type of forest we have, of trees in the forest. Sorry. So GIS was invented for these reasons back then, but now it expanded, and you can use GIS in pretty much every science that you are working on. For example, here in Greece, we're using GIS a lot in archaeology. So, and in in archaeology, I think, and about historical places. So we have them on map, and we need to know the exact location and how they looked like back in the ancient times. So it expanded. It expanded, and it has a great potential.
Yes, and
Yes.
I'm also starting to learn GIS, by the way. So this
Yes.
episode is going to be interesting for me as well. So from what I understand, that GIS is basically, to make it super simple, is that you make a map digital with putting information in each thing. You can add like a points, lines, and also shapes, polygons, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
and these the information should be only numbers and text, or how is what kind of information we can add to this map?
Um, yeah, the information is it. It's a text. So the attribute table. So you have a point, and then you have a table about that point, which has like an X and a Y, which the specific location on Earth, and then you have extra columns that and rows, and you could say like you could put text in there or numbers, and but I don't understand what other, well, pretty much any kind of information that you uh, get from a person, for example, or from a place, you can store it there. Of course, you cannot store like videos. I don't know, maybe, no, I don't think that you can store videos or audio on a point, but maybe they will make something like that in the future. GIS developers. Um, it's it's a very interesting tool. It's very different from, as you said, you started learning, and when you work on GIS software, you have to change your mentality a bit, because when you work on CAD software, then you approach every uh, uh, every line or every polygon as a layer. But when you design on a GIS, then you have to, on GIS software, then you have to approach it as a shape file is called, and then every shape file has it doesn't have only a layer or only the things that you see as lines or polygons or points, but it also has all the information behind. Um, but it's not a good thing to try to compare a CAD software and GIS software when you want to do when you want to design. GIS software and GIS in general is more than that. So you can do the analysis and then generate a result and use it, and then take these results, put it on a CAD and design something. CAD softwares or BIM softwares, especially in small scales, are more powerful, I could say, but GIS are way more powerful in large scales.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly how you mentioned, because when I started, I was telling, okay, why GIS looks so boring? Why it's not like Illustrator, so fun, so much color, beautiful icons? But then I now understand what you mean. It's need a special mindset. So when you work on GIS, you need a GIS mindset. You cannot work with Illustrator mindset in GIS, because then you will just complain about GIS and say,
Yes.
okay, this program is so stupid, and you start this. But I think the GIS has so much potential in creating so much values, and just opening up the image for the urban planners and all, for
Yes.
everyone. But what I noticed, that architects, landscape architects, they are not really working with GIS, because
Yep.
usually GIS is only for urban planners. They're doing the large scale. Do you believe that architects, urban designer that working on a small scale should even use GIS, and in which purpose? What's the reason of this use?
Well, yes, I think that we should, and architects and urban designers, landscape architects, they should implement GIS in their work more. The reason is that GIS gives you the specific location of an activity. So when you design in urban design scale, like a block, so you have a lot of activities happening. Um, the traffic flow, or people walking on the pavement, or if you have a store, like how many people will buy stuff from that store, and all. You have a lot of activities in a neighborhood. So when you if you take all this data and then you put it on a GIS with spatial analysis, then you understand how this neighborhood works. And when you understand how this neighborhood works, then you can, or this block, you can create or design a new one better, or a better version of the existing one. So I think that, well, architecture is, if you design a house, then you don't need GIS in terms of uh, uh, yeah, only the precision, because for example, GIS has a lot of precision when you download um, the boundaries of your property. It has a lot of precision. So, but that you could have it with CAD software probably. Um, I guess in architecture, in very small scale, GIS is not very useful. But in landscape architecture and urban design, it's very useful. And I think architects who they like to work on this scale, they should try to implement it more.
So, because basically it shows up how is the life in that space, how people flow, how they behave there, and like the different, let's say, what do you call them? Maps, analysis, cables.
Analysis.
Yeah.
But it's not only the flows. It's like uh, it's very powerful, since it has all these tables. You could do analysis about the floor area ratio or the open space index, for example, which are important in when you do urban planning. So these are important, very important aspects of urban planning. So to do those calculations, it's good to have a GIS that has the table underneath, and then you ask it like, okay, give me this ratio, and then it generates a new table and gives you the ratio on that block or on another block. And it's good to know where you're heading, because you might have like a Greek city which has like a very, it's very, very dense and it's very, not very nice. Or you might have like a very sparse city, which is again not very nice, like suburbs in United States. Probably it's like they have a very low density. So when you design, it's good to have like, yes, this GIS which has like the table underneath, and then it thinks for you, and you see where you're going, and you adjust your design, and it's back and forth.
Yes,
It,
but
it helps you a lot.
usually to get these kind of maps, it actually costs so much because you need to buy them, right? It's not everything is open source.
No, 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 not nowadays. Um, well, there are, of course, each company has its own GIS nowadays, of course, but there's open source and free GIS softwares you could find online, and there's like a OpenStreetMap, which is again free, and you could download save files and import it um, in a free GIS software, and then do what you like, and or play around, learn. Then you could generate your own data. So you have your phone, and then you could generate your own data. And so I've been there, and I've done that. And then you have a pin on Google Maps, for example, I don't know, or whatever, and then you transfer that on an Excel file, and then you transfer that on uh, on a GIS software, and then you could see on the end of the day or by the end of the week, where have you been, what have you done, uh, and like that was my first thesis, for example. It was like a travel diary of a lot of people throughout Athens, and you could see like what's happening, and then based on that you could generate spontaneous campaigns about people of certain age or certain interests. Um, yeah, doing specific places. So it's about that. You don't need to have, you don't need to buy a GIS. You could always use free ones online, and you don't have to buy data. You could generate your own data. You could gather data from how's it called? Watching people do stuff. How's it called? Oh my God, I forgot. So sorry. I cannot.
Observation.
Observation. Yes, thank you. I forgot the word. So yeah, as urban planners, we spend a lot of time doing observations, or as you said, you are doing an interview, or you're interested about the story of a person. Then every story has a place. So through these interviews, you write down the place, and then you generate that on a map, and you see like a timeline of that story, and then you see that on different layers. So like that happened during morning, that happened in the evening, and all that stuff. So
Yanis,
you
yeah,
don't have to buy. You don't have to.
yes. Yanis, I'm working a lot now with what do you call them? Community engagement and with focus with
Mhm.
kids, that I'm talking a lot with kids, young
Nice.
girls and so on. So I collect a lot of stories. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to put them in numbers. So how can we mix together? You were just talking about this now, but we can continue. How can we mix together like the qualitative and quantitative? Can we add
Yes.
text and stories to these attributes tables in GIS, or how should we put them together?
So uh, that's a great thing that you're doing, and I think that we could use your idea and GIS in something that is called participatory planning. So I'm trying to persuade the local municipality here in order to do something similar. So, for example, when you discuss with a person and asking like, "What's your favorite place?" and then you see that this in an area, and then you see that place comes again and again and again. So you could go there and put something on that place. For example, a bench or like a or I don't know, a kiosk, something like that. So you redesign the area based on their perspective, on their ideas about the place. So instead of uh, having this, because the participatory planning is an old idea, but as I told you in the beginning, GIS could be used in anything. So yes, we as urban planners, we ask people about their city, about their perception of their city or their neighborhood, and then we could just have them as texts, or we could see which places always reappear, and then go and do something on that specific place. So in participatory planning, I think GIS could be of use. An idea that I'm having and I'm trying to do in our municipality is ask citizens to tell us about their about their walk when they during the pandemic and the lockdown. We were allowed to go out for a couple of hours. So when you have only 2 hours to go out, then you select to walk into the city in your ideal for you walk. So I want to ask people, tell me your ideal walk in our city, and then again you could go and transfer, like, okay, I like to walk from that street to that street, or from that square to that square, and then you take or from that landmark to that landmark, and then you take the roads, you write them down, and then you see which roads reappear again and again. And then, for example, have a bike lane there, or widen the pavement, for example, because people like it, or let's say freshen up for the facades of the buildings, you know. So you redesign based on the stories.
Yes, exactly. And here why we need GIS to understand the full pictures and to link it together with the rest of the city.
Yeah, yes. In larger scales, it's important to have a GIS. And the thing is, when you ask a lot of people to tell you their stories, and then so you have a lot of data, and then when you put it on a map, then you can persuade people that here is the data. So because sometimes people rely on hard facts. So when you say that this road is important for 500 people, it's more believable, let's say, like more solid in order for whole city to allocate funds to, refurbish the street, for example. So yeah, GIS gives you that power to take something that is qualitative and turn it in quantitative.
Yes, amazing. And I really like the project that you did in your master thesis. Would you like to share it with us, because it shows really a good example how we can use
Yeah.
GIS basically.
So yeah, well, My thesis in KDH uh, was about modeling and try to find a way to measure the city, and by measuring the city, we could uh, build new neighborhoods in a better way. So I use something that's called multi-criteria analysis. So I I found the different themes that make a city attractive, for example, or a neighborhood attractive. And when we say attractive, I mean attractive for a family to live there, not for a company to open a new store or relocate there. So we are talking about families and livability. So there are major themes in bibliography. For example, the density is important, transportation is important. Um, it's important to have a lively neighborhood. So different concepts, GIS gives you that. Um, how, yeah, gives you that power. So you take different concepts that create an attractive neighborhood, and then you combine them, and then you find out which areas, um, for example, which areas in Stockholm where I did my research were attractive and which weren't, and why. So I found out that areas in Stockholm, especially in Södermalm, they were attractive, and that was because of their design. So they were walkable, they were uh, they were vibrant, uh, they were close to public transport, which were important, and it is important. And some other areas like Tensta wasn't attractive because it was unwalkable. So there was a separation of walking area and driving area. If you probably you've been there, you know what I mean. It yeah, there was only one subway station, so you aren't able um, to walk. Well, yeah, you have to walk a lot or take your car in order uh, to go to another station. You know what I mean. So I found that my model was close to what's happening and which areas are attractive or not. Um, and the reason, and then I did a second, how can I say, um, second, uh, I cannot explain that. So then I saw which areas are attractive based on the price of an apartment. And then I saw that my model finds attractive areas in Södermalm, and then these areas were more expensive in order to buy an apartment. So there was a correlation between price of apartments and my model. So we could say that my model predicts which areas are attractive in terms of, let's say, qualities of design, and then attractive in terms of price.
Yes.
So when you do that, you see that your model works, let's say, and you could take this formula and then you design a new area, you put the formula there, you see, okay, it is attractive, we could have it more attractive by doing that or doing the other. So rerun the analysis or change some stuff in order to create, let's say, the perfect neighborhood. Well, that will never happen because
Yes.
you design for people and how people experience
Yeah.
the cities and the neighborhoods has nothing to do with a model. So you cannot model the reality, but you can. My model, or what I did in my thesis, um, uh, I created a model that says, okay, these are the uh, important aspects in urban planning, and okay, the ones that you chose are correct, and then you should try to do that in that way in order to have some sort of an important, or not important, an attractive neighborhood.
Yes. So basically what you did is that you had the criteria, like a list of
Yes.
criteria like
Yes.
accessibility, mobility, and so on. And then you
Mm-hmm.
analyze an area and you find the relationship between these criteria and the price. And then
Yes.
from that, you have a kind of concept for the new developed area, right?
Yes.
So, Yanis, how is it in the practical? Like if I want to do it and now I want to use a GIS,
Yes.
how did you do that? If you tell us like
Oh,
the practical steps.
oh, the practical steps. So I read a lot about which criteria are important for a family. So as I told you, it's walkability. It's when you walk into a city or in a street to have something that's called sense of enclosure. It's the density, as we said. It's the lively neighborhoods and the proximity to public transport and all the stuff. So I read a lot. I found the different criteria, and then um, I went out and measure the city. So yes, I measured city blocks, network distances to subways, network distances to parks, um, something that is called entropy index, which is very, very important. Um, uh, it's an index that tells you that gives you a number according to the amount of different land uses that exist in a city block. So I measured, as I told you, I measured the city. I did a lot of observations, a lot of work uh, on GIS. I downloaded uh, yeah, from Zeus, for example, in Stockholm. It's a platform that you download data about uh, cities in Sweden. Statistics Centralbyrån also took a lot of data from there. And then I did some interviews in urban planners. I discussed a lot about which of these indicators were important to people. And then I put them all on GIS and got a number. It's it's like that. Um, that's the important thing of GIS. And then you have on a map uh, which areas are least or more attractive. Yeah.
Yes. So
So
yeah, sorry, what you did is that you collected that you observed, you did the interviews, and you put all the data in GIS and created a
mhm,
formula that gives you a number, which is a kind
mhm.
of rate if this neighborhood is okay or
The
not
city
okay for the
block,
family. A city block,
the
sorry.
city block. Yes.
Yeah. So how much important is it to design the whole process before you start click on
Oh,
GIS?
it is that by far the most important. Otherwise, you could be lost on your data or gather data for no reason at all. So before you do that, you have to know where you want to go, read a lot, think about, okay, if I select this indicator or if I select um, that other thing, what type of data should I gather before you start putting everything on GIS and do the work in there.
Yes, yes,
So yeah, for me, thinking a lot, discussing a lot before you start, um, read a lot. It's it's by far design a lot in terms like how you want to structure the whole process is by far the most important. It's not creative. It's not a creative process. For example, when you are an architect, sometimes uh, you want to create, so you want to design, you want to sketch something, so um, you do something on your sketchbook and then revisit it again some time later and then gather some other data and form it differently. But this is the other way around. So first you have to know what you want to do and then gather data and maybe be creative in how you will implement these ideas in GIS.
yes. It's
Yeah.
interesting, especially you
The creative
mentioned art.
process.
Yeah, the process might be it's a big different from like what an
Yes.
architect sketch and develop. So it might be less creative, but also it's a big journey as well. I can tell from my
Mhm.
own journey now. Super interesting. I'm learning a lot. It's a lot of you need. It's a special mindset. You need to be systematic in every single step. There's not so much space for abstract and
Mhm.
having
Mhm.
this much fun. It's either one or zero, like you need to be super specifying sometimes.
Well, it's not one or zero, but I understand what you mean.
Yes. Yeah, maybe you know more GI, yeah, you know more GIS than me, and that's why you're telling it's not really 1 point or zero. But hopefully soon I will explore the other parts, the fun part of the GIS. Well, Yanis, in Urbanistica podcast, we
Mhm.
talk a lot about what is a smart city because this podcast is
Okay.
more to inspire us
Mhm.
in order to create smarter and more livable cities. So you work a lot with GIS and you have an interesting point of view. What is a smart city? So, how do you define a smart city?
Well, smart cities. Well, that's a very tough question because everything when you make the life of your citizens easier, then your city is smart. Um, when you listen to their needs, then your city is smart. Something like that. I mean, I could tell you about Internet of Things and then how we uh, design our cities or our networks, street networks, based uh, on data that are like cars or you know traffic lights generate and all that stuff. We could discuss about that, but that's the technical aspect of smart cities. In my opinion, we need to have like a more uh, qualitative idea about what a smart city is. A city where there's little segregation, it's a smart city. uh, you know, uh, so we need to try to gather this type of data and then probably with the use of GIS generate smarter cities. So for example, what you are doing with the stories, for me, if you put it on GIS and then presented to people. That's a story of another kind of smart city. No.
So so
Um,
basically so basically for you is that we should use all the technology we got in order to hear what people say and implement
yes.
what they want or what they wish to have.
Yes. Exactly. So it's not only about trying to find the fastest route from one place to the other, or yeah, for well, there are so many uh, great technical ideas about smart cities. So if you have like a road that has uh, two lanes, and then there's a lot of traffic during that type during these hours and that other uh, time of the day, then for example through the Internet of Things you could have like the two lanes instead of going the opposite direction, have the road go to the same direction in order to uh, lessen the traffic flow for that specific time. So you could do stuff like that, or like fewer people walk uh, during the night from that street, then dim the lights. So these are technical, perfect ideas about smart cities, or like when you enter the city center, let's have like a, a text come to your like phone, tells you like, okay, now you are a tourist and you are in the city center of like Stockholm. Okay, you could do this, and that, and then or tomorrow there's like this concert in Kungsholmen. You could go there by using like this subway and all that stuff. So there's are technical, but there's also the other thing, which is like a smart city is when the city listens to its citizens, to people who live there, and adapts and evolves based on what they think.
Yes, and now you're working in a municipality, and it's
Yes.
super interesting. And I would love to hear how do you do in order to create a smart city? So how are you listening to people now?
Um, well, nowadays, no, because we're not allowed to walk outside. But well, I work in the municipality the last, I don't know, like almost 3 months, and we are 2 months in lockdown. So yeah, it's a bit hard to talk with people, but that's what I want to do. I think, as I told you, my idea before is ask people what's their ideal walk, or what's their uh, preferred spot in our hometown, um, and then use all those data in order to generate um, a nice, I don't know, a nice walk in the city, or an urban park, not urban, a line park, for example, or uh, connect interesting spots. So if you could ask people through social media, so I could post like, okay, tell me what you like, or tell me what's your favorite place. But I think that it's better to, especially here in Greece, to do like in-person contacts to discuss uh, um, about stuff for the city, you know. So that's the things that I want to do, and yeah, try to make a better city. And as I told you, like here, our mayor is interested in doing modern things. He's like uh, he's interested in trying to find new ways in making our city better. So yeah, I think that uh, in the future, I might implement these new ideas in urban planning. We'll see. Yeah.
Yes, super interesting. But Yanis, when you were coming back with ideas about the public participatory and community
Hmm.
engagement, did you see that there was a open mind and acceptance to your idea, or how is the culture and urban planning culture?
Mm.
If you got my
Well,
question.
well, the thing is, here, for example, in Greece, people are very interested in planning because pretty much everybody owns land inside a city. So when you do something, it affects them. Uh, that's good, but that's also bad because uh, they are very passionate about their property. So sometimes, in order to do something, and when there's so many people owning land, uh, that makes the planning procedure very slow because you have to talk with all of them, and then you have to persuade pretty much all of them. So they're interested. They have their different ideas, um, and it takes time here in Greece. I think that planning in countries where um, land ownership is slower might be faster. You know what I mean? Uh, it's like a municipality decides that I want to build this new area, and then you could do that here in Greece, for example. When you want to build a new area, it's like, oh my god, probably you're you would be lucky if in your lifetime see that new area being built.
Yes, I know. I know. This is like a business as usual, almost in many countries that it takes so much time and until you retire, then you see the impact of what you were doing.
Okay.
Well,
Ah,
Yanis, I think we can keep go talking about this interesting topic on and
of
on.
course.
But
I would love to.
I would love that we continue in one more part when you tell us
Hmm.
more about like a real project from what you're doing in the
Perfect.
municipality. It will be super
Of course.
interesting.
I would
And
love to.
yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving your time to Urbanistica podcast.
My pleasure. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. Uh, I would love to do that again whenever you want. I'm always here. Um, and keep up the good work. Uh, use GIS as much as you can. Uh, and yeah,
So, Yanis, what will be your next step?
um, well, I'm thinking about doing a PhD probably in something that is called data-driven urban design. I, that's an idea. I don't know if I'm gonna do that when, where, uh, but that is something that I want to explore. And yeah, study a bit more, work a bit more, watch Urbanistica podcast a bit more,
My pleasure.
and
I will be happy.
yeah, um, yeah.
Yes,
That's the future for me right
super.
now.
And
That
I wish you all the good luck with all your
thank you
projects.
very much.
How would you
I
like
wish you the
to,
same.
thank you. How would you like to summarize your
Um,
reflections and our conversation and three takeaway messages?
um, Spatial analysis is the future of urban planning. I think GIS um, is the perfect tool in order to analyze large cities, and we shouldn't Um, uh, yeah, we shouldn't, how's it called, corner ourselves and thinking that, okay, GIS is only about numbers, and it's more than that. Um, it's a different it's a different use of the stories. So you could have the stories and use it in a different way. That's the three getaway messages.
Great. And three hashtags.
Um, Hashtags. Hmm, interesting. Um, Again, spatial analysis. Great topic. Um, Livable cities and what else? And mm, Data-driven urban design. I think
Yeah.
that that is a hashtag that it has a future.
Yes.
Let's say.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for the hashtags, for the messages, and thank you so much again for your time, Yanis. I'm happy to have you in Urbanistica podcast.
My pleasure and my honor.
And thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Please don't forget to follow on Instagram and subscribe the YouTube channel for live talks. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work and keep loving cities.